Students, will you please make sure you're on page 300 of your textbook? We're going to start in chapter 10 with section 1, the rise of city-states. We're only going to be reading from page 300 to 301 today. We won't be going further than that, though section 1 does continue until page 305. But today, just 300 to 301. The rise of city-states, so how city-states came about in ancient Greece and how they flourished. We have already read the story about Pericles and how his family fled from the Persians who were invading Athens. We've talked about our vocabulary, and so today we're ready to jump in. While we read, we're going to be keeping track of our reading using this graphic organizer. Will you please press pause and make sure your first and last name, our class period, and today's date is on your paper. Please pause as often as you need and rewind as often as you need to make sure you have the information. So take notes. Analyze cause and effect. Use what you read about the rise of Greek city-states to complete the table below. For each cause given, write the effect. For each effect given, write the cause. So for example, if we look at number 1 here, it gives us a cause. The mountains isolated lowland Greek communities. We need to identify what was the effect. Because the mountains isolated these communities, what about it? And number 2, we don't have a cause, but we do know, therefore, the Greeks became skilled sailors and merchants. So we essentially just need to fill in the blank for each one that is listed here. All right, please join me on page 300. 15-year-old Pericles, as you read in the story, watched his fellow Greeks defeat Persia, the greatest empire on earth. The Battle of Salamis was a turning point in Greek history. After Salamis, Greek culture reached a peak in art, drama, philosophy, and political science. It helped form Western civilization, the civilization of Europe and the Americas. The Greeks gave us words and traditions such as democracy, geometry, politics, and the Olympic Games. How did the Greeks come to have so much influence in our world? Geography of the Greek world. In ancient times, there was no country called Greece. Instead, there were communities of Greek speakers scattered across the islands and coasts of the Mediterranean Sea. This early Greek world lay on the fringe of 2 continents, Europe and Asia. Travelers and traders passed through the region, exchanging goods, ideas, and customs. Okay, as we head into the first part, it says a rugged land. So the first cause is the mountains isolated lowland Greek communities. We need to know the effect. So we're looking for a phrase about mountains isolated lowland Greek communities. A rugged land. Modern Greece occupies a large peninsula that juts into the Mediterranean Sea. A peninsula is a land area almost surrounded by water. A number of other peninsulas also extend from the peninsula of mainland Greece. The largest of them, in southern Greece, is called the Peloponnesian Peninsula. About 2000 BC, Greek-speaking peoples entered these lands from the north. They settled on mainland Greece. A mainland is an area of land that is part of a continent. Greek speakers also settled on the islands of the Aegean Sea. So again, if we look at our map, and we have it here on page 301, we know they came from the north and settled in Greece on the mainland, as well as islands here in the Aegean Sea. Top of page 301. Mainland Greece is divided by mountain ranges. Between these ranges lie narrow valleys and small plains. The mountains were good for grazing sheep and goats, but they were too steep and rocky for farming. Less than 1/4 of the land could be used to grow crops. The only fertile land was in the lowland valleys and plains. Here, people settled in farming communities. The mountains isolated these lowland communities. Oh, pause there. Do you see that? The mountains isolated these lowland communities. What does this say? The mountains isolated lowland Greek communities. Okay, so what's the effect? So they're isolated. Well, what about it? What's the next sentence say? So a fiercely independent spirit developed among the Greeks. They never attempted to unite under a single government. In fact, Greek cities were often at war with one another. So let's do this one together. So if the mountains isolated them, the effect is that they were fiercely independent. So the effect is fiercely independent and separate. They never united. Fiercely independent and separate. Fiercely independent. They never attempted to unite. In fact, they were often at war with one another. Pause if you need more time. The next one we're looking at is the Greeks became skilled sailors and merchants. We need to know what the cause was. Surrounded by the sea. Although mountain ranges isolated communities, the sea brought contact with the wider world. The Greeks became skillful sailors and merchants. Oh, right there. There's our phrase. The Greeks became skilled sailors and merchants. Why did they become skilled sailors and merchants? Because the mountain ranges isolated them, so the sea brought contact with the wider world. So if you have a bunch of mountain ranges separating everybody together, how are you going to access them? You're going to have to go by ocean. You're going to have to rely on the water, on your skills. So number 2, the causes, the Greeks became skilled sailors and merchants. Why? We have mountains, I'm going to abbreviate it. Mountains divided, comma, relied on the ocean. The mountains divided them, so they relied on the ocean for contact with others. Pause the video if you need more time. So the Greeks became skillful sailors and merchants. Greek fishing and trading ships crisscrossed the waters of the Mediterranean Sea to the south, the Aegean Sea to the east, and the Ionian Sea to the west. This led to contact with the older, more complex cultures of North Africa and Asia. We're going to pause here on Mediterranean climate real quick. If we look at our paper, we want to know Greece's Mediterranean climate is ideal for deep-rooted crops. So that's the cause. What's the effect? Greece has a Mediterranean climate with mild, wet winters and hot, dry summers. The lack of rain made it difficult to grow shallow-rooted crops such as grains, which need frequent watering. So the mainland Greeks were always searching for foreign sources of grain. On the other hand, the Mediterranean climate was ideal for growing deep-rooted plants, such as olive trees and grapevines. Olive oil and wine became important for trade goods and brought in wealth. So, if Greece's Mediterranean climate is ideal for deep-rooted crops, we look here, which crops were deep-rooted and how did that benefit Greece? Please find that answer in the paragraph and put it on number 3 here.